Empire. What's up and Happy New Year. This is Mike Jones and this is the Football Jones Podcast. Thanks for coming back for another episode. Hope you had a Happy New Year. You can read me at usatoday.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at @ByMikeJones. Got a jam-packed episode. Going to give you my thoughts on the Redskins hiring of Ron Rivera as their next head coach. Going to visit with Jason Reid of ESPN's Undefeated to get his thoughts on the Rivera hiring and a project he's been working on this year, the year of the black quarterback. I think this is going to be an episode you're really going to enjoy. First up, my thoughts on the Rivera hiring. I like it. I think that Ron Rivera is a good coach. I did not think that he deserved to have been fired in Carolina. It brought stability to that Panthers team. He took them over when they were 2-14, entering that 2011 season. They drafted Cam Newton. He really worked to rebuild that team. They had a strong defense. Basically, almost every year he was there, top 10 defenses. Obviously, this year they were down a little bit. But I felt like he was unfairly judged the last 2 years because his most important player, Cam Newton, was not able to be on the field this year. And last year, he had the shoulder injury that he really wasn't able to throw a ball further than 10, 15 yards downfield and was not the game changer that that team had been built around. So if you talk to anybody who has worked or played with Ron Rivera, they've got a lot of respect for him. They say he's a man of character, a man of discipline. He instills trust and confidence and accountability in his players, and that's something that the Washington Redskins desperately need as they try to rebuild this thing. As Dan Snyder entrusts Rivera with changing the culture of this team that has just been basically, for the most part, a debacle for the last 20 years. Have not had back-to-back winning seasons. Have not had a lot of playoff appearances. I think it's 5 playoff appearances since 1999. Do not have any playoff wins, to speak of in the last decade. They are just a mess, a lot of dysfunction, and Ron Rivera is probably that stabilizing force that they need. If, there's a big if. I'm still waiting to see how this front office and the power structure is going to be laid out. If Dan Snyder steps back and lets Ron Rivera lead this team, build it the way that he sees fit, surround himself with the people that he wants, not people that have been handpicked for him or forced upon him, then I think the Redskins have a chance. We're waiting to see what this front office is going to look like. There's rumors there's going to be a lot of change. We're waiting to see what his coaching staff is going to look like. Outside of Jack Del Rio, who is a very good defensive coordinator, defensive coach, he's coming aboard. We'll find out about the offensive coordinator. They're interviewing Kevin O'Connell to see if he's going to keep that job or if Rivera is going to bring somebody else in, and we'll see. But I think that Rivera is a good hire for this team, and again, we'll see how it all plays out before we can pass judgment on if they have a real chance for success. But I do know if Snyder steps back and gives Rivera a chance to do this thing, their chances improve. But that's a big if Snyder can stay out of the way. But anyway, we're going to catch up with Jay Reid now, talk to him about the hire and also the year of the black quarterback when we come back. And we're here now with Jason Reid, my buddy, senior NFL writer from ESPN's Undefeated. If you're not familiar, it's ESPN's site that covers sports and intersect with race and culture as well. And wanted to talk to him. He has a long history of monitoring the Washington Redskins, covered them at the Washington Post with me for a lot of years. And now he still keeps tabs on them and the league as a whole. But so, Jay Reid, what do you think about the hiring of Ron Rivera and then the announcement they just announced the official hiring of Jack Del Rio as his defensive coordinator?
Well, obviously, Jonesy, two significant moves with regard to Rivera. You're talking about a 2-time AP NFL Coach of the Year. you're talking about a coach of color. So obviously a lot of the coaches of color in the league have been very frustrated about their ability to move up and get jobs. They'll be happy with it too, because it's not just that he's the head coach. Ron Rivera is coming to be the guy. Mm-hmm. Now, they might hire a general manager, but whatever the title that the general manager has, it's going to be understood that Ron Rivera is the guy in the organization. And whoever they bring in to handle personnel and help him will actually just be helping him. He's going to be the final authority on everything. So from the standpoint of the Redskins making a major hire, Ron Rivera is clearly a good head coach. But I don't have to tell you this. We've seen a lot of this before. Right. We've seen the Redskins hire big names, and there's all this fanfare and excitement that Daniel Snyder has finally gotten it right, and he's going to finally step aside. And, I read a piece you wrote recently about this, saying, hey, okay, well, now Snyder has to actually really let this guy do the job. And we have seen in the past that hasn't happened. So I think that when you just talk about the hire, yeah, it's a good hire, but do we know if it's going to work? Based on the history, we've seen nothing to lead us to believe that this is going to work.
Yeah, that's my real question. I guess the one thing that I'm curious about is Dan Snyder got rid of his definitely his two most trusted guys, in Bruce Allen and Larry Hess. You never saw Dan Snyder without one of those guys. I mean, he would walk down to the practice field and Larry Hess would pull out some chew for him, to get it, he and Bruce were always lockstep. Bruce would go to league meetings instead of Dan Snyder lots of times. So now those guys are gone, and we don't know yet what's going to happen with Eric Schaefer. There's, he's still there now. There's rumblings that he could be gone after the draft. But that's another guy who also went to league meetings for him. So I guess if Snyder is ridding himself of all these trusted guys, the people who've been in his ear all this time, and Rivera is there now, I mean, does that mean he's going to step back? And then my only question is, if they have one rocky season, is he going to be able to stay out of the way and be patient? That's really what we're going to have to see.
Well, all those people you just mentioned, I mean, that's exactly right, obviously. And I think the thing is, if you're a Redskins fan, here's what you hope: that he's finally hit rock bottom, that he finally says, all right, I just got to do the right thing, hire someone who has the credentials and truly get out the way. And by getting rid of Bruce Allen, by getting rid of Larry Hess, two people who, I mean, we've both heard a lot about in terms of their ability and mistakes that they've made. And then, potentially Eric Schaefer too, who's a good man and who's done a good job. But, you can't argue against the house cleaning there because they haven't been successful. Right. So if I'm a Redskins fan, what I hope is that Dan Snyder has just hit rock bottom and he realizes I got to just clean house and get out the way. But you also brought up the thing about what if there's one bad season. That's always the thing. Can he really, truly just stay out of it and give the Rivera the 5 years to see if he can really fix this thing?
Yeah, that's going to be curious. And other thing I'm curious to see is who they bring in for Dwayne Haskins. I like that Snyder didn't just do the impulsive thing of finding the hot offensive mind to be his head coach just because of Haskins. I like that he went with the guy that he thought was the best leader. I thought Marvin Lewis would have been a good candidate, but I talked to some people around the league, who are familiar with both, who said, well, if you want a guy with real discipline, Rivera is probably a guy with a little bit of an edge. I don't know that myself, but people felt like a real disciplinarian, Rivera was a guy to go. So I'm glad that he went with a leader, not just making a move for one quarterback. But it is very important that Dwayne Haskins has the right mentorship. And they're interviewing Kevin O'Connell. We'll see. I know that he's a bright guy. There are people around the league who like him. I'm not saying that it's a must that he returns because there's a lot of bright guys in the league. We'll see. But what do you think? What kind of guy, what would you like to see surrounding Dwayne Haskins for a guy in his ear as he continues to try to develop and learn this league?
Well, I think I see Haskins already come out and say like O'Connell will come back. And that makes sense. He has familiarity with him. what I really want to see is Ron Rivera committed to Dwayne Haskins?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that Snyder is obviously, they took him 15th overall. You know, Snyder clearly likes him, but I haven't heard from Ron Rivera, and Ron Rivera is not going to come out and tell the media what he really thinks of it. But I really would like to know, like, when he's watched the film, what does he think? I mean, does Ron Rivera believe that Dwayne Haskins, with the right help around him, can be a 10-year successful starter in this league? I don't know that. Now, let's just go on the question, though, and assume that Rivera does like Haskins. Well, listen, Haskins needs to really apply himself this offseason. And, I don't know what type of offense Rivera is specifically going to run. Are they going to stay with what they did? I mean, if they retain O'Connell, you think that would be part of it. But I think two things. One, you got to get him someone who, if you believe in Haskins, you got to get him someone who is going to really get him in there, working this offseason, and someone he can develop a rapport with. Because if you don't do that, then it's just not going to work for him at all.
Yeah, I agree with you. And my one thing with O'Connell is sometimes it looked like balance was a struggle for him until Callahan was like, no, we are going to run the ball. There was a lack of balance, and wisdom, with experience comes wisdom and discipline. And maybe O'Connell will learn from this past year and realize that, when we arm this kid with a strong run game, I'm not saying run the ball every first down like they always were doing until they started mixing up a little bit. But I really hope that maybe their quarterbacks coach is somebody with a lot of experience that can be in his ear and train him a lot. But anyway, segueing from him, you've been doing this project, the Year of the Black Quarterback. What inspired that, and what have you learned throughout this whole year as you followed guys like Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, some of those guys?
Jonesy, what really inspired it was I was sitting on an airplane after the Super Bowl, going home, and I just started thinking about the season and the upcoming season. Don't ask me why right after the Super Bowl I was thinking about the upcoming season. I should have been thinking about vacation. But I was thinking about the upcoming season and the year that Deshaun had just had. Mahomes had just won the MVP award. Dak had taken the Cowboys to the playoffs. I thought that Lamar Jackson, even though that playoff game didn't end well, he showed a lot. And you're already hearing rumblings that the Ravens were just going to go all in on him. And I thought, wow, I mean, if all these things happen, Russell is Russell in Seattle, this could be like kind of a really groundbreaking year. So just sitting on the plane flying home, I was just thinking about it. And I think that the year from an expectation level has been even bigger than I thought it would be. I thought Lamar would take a big step, but I mean, he's the MVP of the league. I mean, I didn't see him becoming the MVP of the league. I mean, Ravens 14-2, best record in franchise history, 12-game winning streak. He's done. I saw some stat where in the history of the NFL, like there have been, let's just say 1,000, 3,000-yard passing seasons and 1,000, 1,000-yard rushing seasons. That's not accurate. I'm just saying, just for an example. This guy's the first one to do it, to do 3,000 yards passing and 30 touchdowns passing and 1,000 yards rushing. So I think when we look at this year, what Deshaun has done in Houston, Dak had a fabulous year, although they collapsed in the second half and didn't make the playoffs. But Patrick has the knee injury, but comes back and leads the team to a division championship again. These guys are young. All three quarterbacks on the AFC Pro Bowl roster are young African-American quarterbacks, Lamar, Deshaun, and Patrick. So I think when you look at the league and the future of the league, these guys are well positioned to have prominent roles for a very, very long time.
I feel like, in a way, I almost didn't like your title, the Year of the Black Quarterback. I almost felt like it should have been the generation of the black quarterback, because I feel like this has been building, and I think it's only we're going to see more of it. What doors do you think were open that led to this year? And then what are the building blocks that are going to go from here? Because, I mean, when I think of, okay, Colin Kaepernick, RG3's, the way Kyle Shanahan overhauled that offense for RG3, and then Greg Roman did it in San Francisco, and then all of a sudden the Seahawks started doing it for Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson's been the one with the staying power. But I felt like that kind of was leading towards this, and now this here could lead to something further. What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I get the generation. I think, Warren Moon summed it up for me when he said that, look, this is all about opportunity. So you can talk about this as a generational shift, but it's culminated in this season. Okay. And so I definitely agree with you. I think it's a generational thing. But Warren's point was that even if you have a generational shift, there's one season where the whole thing explodes. Okay. And this was the season where the thing exploded. I mean, last year, until McNair had won the MVP award, he shared it with Peyton Manning early in the 2000s. An African-American quarterback had never won the MVP award. We're now going to have 3 African-American quarterbacks winning the award since 2015. And so it's really as simple as, and again, I'll go back to Warren Moon, only African-American passer in the Hall of Fame. When I talked about this back in June and July, he said, it really is, there's no secret about what happened. It was just that African-American quarterbacks are getting more opportunities at the grassroots level, in high school, in college, and the talent's always been there. It's just a matter of opportunities. So the explosion this year is a generational thing. It's just the fact that over the last 20, 25 years, they've had more opportunities. So I think when you talk about the doors being open, there's a whole thing about, well, are these guys just runners? Well, no. I mean, if you look at the stats, Lamar Jackson, as fabulous as a runner as he's been, he's also doing it from the pocket. Patrick Mahomes is a pocket passer. Deshaun Watson's an incredible athlete, but he does it from the pocket. Russell, incredible athlete, but he does it from the pocket. Dak Wilson So I think the doors that have been open this year that, okay, more and more teams, especially after Lamar wins this MVP award and potentially if he wins the Super Bowl, more and more teams are going to be like, well, no, I mean, the shift is, yes, you always have to be able to do it from the pocket. That's one thing Doug told me. Doug Williams, first African-American quarterback in the Super Bowl. He said, look, in this league, you're always going to have to be able to drop back, read it, and throw it. But if you can be athletic too and do more things to give teams more options, that's what we're going to want. So the door that I think is open, Jonesy, is just that this year it's so obvious that the opportunities have led to these guys thriving, and more teams are going to just have to acknowledge, look, this is what we want.
I do feel like we're starting to get to the point, and maybe I'm too maybe I'm too Pollyanna-ish, but I feel like with this group right here, and then some of the stuff we're seeing, people are starting to get to the point where they're evaluating these guys on skill set. Lamar was unfairly judged, coming out of the draft. Oh, he's better off as a wide receiver or whatever. And Pauline has said, he was wrong. But I think that eventually we are going to get to the point, which is what these guys, everybody wants, is that you're not looking at them as, can this black guy play quarterback? It's like, oh, can we fit this guy into our system? What can we do to equip this guy? And that will represent true progress, I think, in my mind. But then the other thing I'm wondering is, okay, we're seeing black quarterbacks get more opportunities, offensive minds being more open and creative, instead of fitting them into square pegs, these round pegs into a square hole. But when is it going to expand that black coaches start getting the opportunities that we're seeing black quarterbacks start to get?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, isn't it?
Or coaches of color, of all, Ron Rivera being one, like you said. But when is that? We're seeing the quarterback stereotype change. When is the perception for the quarterbacks, the coaches?
It's interesting, Jonesy, you bring up Rivera, because I think Rivera could have a big impact on that. Again, Rivera is going to be the man in D.C. And, there have been powerful coaches of color in the past. Dungy comes to mind. I mean, Tomlin in Pittsburgh. And Rivera when he was with the Carolina Panthers. But there are very few times in NFL history when you've had a head coach of color who wields the amount of power that Rivera is going to wield in Washington. And I just think if he can succeed, and look, I don't need to tell you what a mess DC has been. I mean, you made your career on breaking major news on the Redskins. So I think, though, that if Rivera can get this thing turned around, the NFL is a copycat league. I think that more teams might be, okay, well, not just hire African-American coaches and African-American GMs and GMs of color and GMs and coaches of color, but they might really empower them to, like, okay, well, if Rivera could do this in Washington, like if Rivera can get the Redskins turned around, and I'm not talking about winning multiple Super Bowls, I just mean change their horrible culture and get them to be consistent winners and consistently going to the playoffs, I think that could have a massive impact on hiring across the board for both coaches and GMs.
What do you think Eric Bieniemy's chances are? I mean, we've heard his name mentioned here and there. Last year, I don't understand Cincinnati's decision to hire Zach Taylor over him, but it probably was a good thing for Bieniemy not to go to that mess there. But this year, the Browns, the Giants, still looking for head coaches. We don't know about the Cowboys yet, but what are Bieniemy's chances?
I've talked to a bunch of people around the league. I did this kind of thing about trying to match candidates of color with potential openings, and just talking with a lot of player personnel guys, a few GMs, players, and assistant coaches. Bieniemy's a guy who, you look at what he's done in Kansas City. You look at how Patrick Mahomes has credited him with much of his success. Last year, he doesn't even get a look at that Cincinnati job. In terms of like, okay, will bring this guy in and actually say, hey, he's one of our finalists. The knock against Bieniemy is that he doesn't call plays, because Andy Reid calls the plays in Kansas City. Now, Nagy, the Chicago Bears coach, when he was in Kansas City and held the job that Bieniemy now has, Nagy one year did get to call plays because a lot of things had happened. The team had struggled, and Andy temporarily gave him play calling duty. But my thing is Nagy getting play calling duty for such a short period of time, does that disqualify Eric Bieniemy? Yeah. I mean, you look at it, you say Bieniemy has succeeded in Kansas City. So long-winded answer to your question, I think he's going to legitimately get looks this year, okay, a lot more than he got last year. But I don't know ultimately if he winds up getting a job, because the knock that they like to put on him is, well, he doesn't call plays.
No. He does. He is in Patrick Mahomes' ear. Andy Reid will call the play. Bieniemy is in Patrick Mahomes' ear before every play. And when he comes to sideline, I think we've seen even more this year where he's sitting with Mahomes at times, talking with him. To just say he doesn't call plays shows that people aren't doing their homework. Because, I mean, this dude memorizes the whole playbook each week. He knows the offense inside and out. Again, like you said, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, those guys have talked about it. It's just kind of lazy thinking to say that. And again, head coaching is about leadership. Mm-hmm. Yeah, anybody can call plays. Well, maybe not anybody, but can you lead? There's so many bright offensive minds who failed as offensive head coaches because they couldn't lead. Jay Gruden being one of them. Guys liked him, but there was a lack of discipline. There's a lack of uniformity. He wasn't the tone setter he needed to be. Eric Bieniemy is creative enough with that offense and extremely bright enough to realize. And I feel like he's a leader of men. And I just, it's crazy that this league, that the ownership groups are so lazy that it's just kind of copycat, and you're not thinking, okay, well, how is this guy as a leader and selector of talent, not only on rosters, but as a coaching staff?
Agreed. I don't know. I don't really know what I can add to that. I think you summed it up perfectly. That's the situation.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see. I know that there are guys in the league that are very frustrated, but maybe, I think Ron Rivera getting hired was a great thing for people of color. Maybe Bieniemy can get his shot, whether it's Giants, the Browns. And the Browns are supposedly looking at Andrew Berry as a potential GM, brother who's been working in Philly. So you never know if that'll open doors as well. And also, I think that Brian Flores deserves A lot of credit for the way he turned that team. Look, I know they didn't win a lot of games, but the way the season started, it looked like they were going to be 0-16, and that team continued to improve and fight hard, and then go out in the season. It wasn't that the Patriots weren't caring about that game there. They did not want any parts of playing this weekend here. So for him to deal them a blow like that, major props to him as a first-year head coach.
Yeah, like Harbaugh is my coach of the year, but Brian Flores, for everything you just said, he's right up there. I mean, that team looked like it was going to be like historically inept. And they competed. And they, like you said, the Patriots didn't want to lose that game. So, yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
And Mike Tomlin, I really was back and forth on whether to make him my coach of the year, because I think if they had made the playoffs, he would have been my guy. Boom.
No question.
But still, even so, 3 quarterbacks, an undrafted rookie at quarterback, I mean, dealing with, not having Juju Smith-Schuster for a lot of it, James Conner for a lot of it, a lot of young guys on defense, the way he held that thing together, I was like, y'all better just get off his back and never, question him as a
probably his best coaching job.
I agree.
When you factor in everything he had to contend with, and I mean, horrible quarterback play. Yeah, I mean, like, again, for me, Harbaugh, just because of the way they revamped that whole thing and bought into Jackson and the season that they had. Yeah. But no question, Flores is right there, and Tomlin too. And if Tomlin had made the playoffs, I might have had to even nudge him above Harbaugh.
All right, quickly, what are you doing? Are you covering any playoff games this week, and what are you expecting?
Yeah, I'm going to Buffalo at Houston.
Oh, okay, I'll see you there.
I'll see you there. I'm figuring I think Deshaun has to win this game.
Yeah.
I think they got a home playoff game. The playoffs didn't go well for them last year. I think they got to win this game. Josh Allen's a good young quarterback, and that Bills team is good, man. They play some really good defense. So, yeah, I'm going there, and I'm thinking that the Texans pulled out at home.
All right, Jay Reid, thanks so much. Tell everybody where they can find you.
What you mean, like my house? Oh no, you mean
social media, online.
No, at theundefeated.com and at ESPN.com.
And on Twitter?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I've had 17 weeks of 2 podcasts a week, and no guest has ever not understood how to tell people where they can find them. Welcome to 2020.
They can also find me. What's my Twitter handle? It's
I don't know. I've muted you.
I know you do that sometimes. No, the Twitter handle is at JReidESPN. And I got to tell you, it's such a privilege to see how the young bull has blown up so much. I mean, I remember you coming to me at Redskins Park, me, hi, Mr. Reid. My name is Mike Jones. I'm coming here to cover the Redskins. And I just honestly, man, just like, I read your commentary now. I sit down on a flight and the USA Today is there, and I pick it up and I see Mike Jones' big old picture at the top on a column. And, all kidding aside, I mean, it is really great to see the young bull with his podcast out there, doing commentary and breaking news. And like, hey, aren't you happy that I told you?
All right, thank you, everybody. Leave that joke alone. Here we go. Thanks. I hope you have a great day. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, buddy.
All right, and that's my visit with Jason Reid. Hope you enjoyed that. I feel like we could go on and on about those topics there. And this is a big weekend here, like you said, for Deshaun Watson. He's one of my 8 guys that really have a chance to kind of define themselves. He's got to have a big outing and prove he can win. They lost at home in the playoffs last year. This time he gets another crack at it at home to win a game. Josh Allen's another guy. They've got a great defense, but the knock has been that, he hasn't had a 300-yard passing game at all this year. In his second year as a starter, we'll see if he can do enough to kind of complement that defense. Up in Tennessee, facing the Patriots, obviously a guy I'm looking at is Ryan Tannehill. He did a great job stepping in, taking over as their starter, earning himself some money, but can he win a playoff game here and really lock up this job for himself for next year with the Titans? We'll see. Really looking at this Patriots offense, We know their defense is great. Their offense has continued to struggle, and they're kind of on shaky footing. I don't know if they have what it takes to take that stretch run like I was expecting that they could. And then the other NFC game, the Seahawks facing the Eagles. I'm watching DK Metcalf because Russell Wilson is amazing, but his playmakers are kind of not quite ready for prime time, it seems, not quite consistent. But if DK Metcalf here at the end of his rookie year can elevate himself and be a game changer against a secondary that kind of has been battered, then that's huge for the Seahawks, and they can win that game on the road. But Carson Wentz has the opportunity this is his playoff debut. When you think about it, he's had injuries and hasn't been a part of any of their playoff runs, but this is his playoff debut. Could be a big game for him to make a statement and prove that he is deserving of that big contract that they gave him this year. Anyway, that's my wrap up for the playoffs opening week. Hope you guys have a great day. Again, read me at usatoday.com. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @ByMikeJones. Email me, mjones@usatoday.com. And do me a favor, tell 1 or 2 friends about the podcast. 2020, we're going to grow, and you're going to be a big part of it. Tell a buddy, send them the link, and let's get them on board as well. And I will talk to you on Monday for another episode of the Football Jones podcast.